Okay, folks, welcome. Chumash and Rashi. We are sixth reading. A bit lengthier today. Let's get right to it. Chapter 15, verse number 1. Miketche v'shanim, at the end of 7 years, Taseh Shemitah, you shall make a Shemitah. Shemitah means a release of the land, meaning sabbatical, right? Sabbatical, hold on. Sorry. Okay, Rashi, Miketche v'shanim. The end of 7 years. What does it mean, the end of 7 years? Sabbatical year is, when's the sabbatical year? The seventh year. Yochel. So one might think, Sheva Shanim, 7 years, the whole milva, for each loan and every loan. Remember yesterday we learned every 3 years you have to give second tithes to the poor, third and sixth year. So you might think for each and every loan, 7 years. One second, just want to sure. So here we're talking about every 7 years, at the end of 7 years, there's all the loans are, if you lend somebody money, they're released, right? That's what we're speaking about here. Meaning you don't have, the person doesn't owe you the money anymore, biblically at least, right? We just learned this in the Rambam. Talmud Loimar, the Torah tells us every year. So you might think each loan is based on when the loan was given 7 years from that moment, right? 7 years is till when you can collect it after the 7th year, then it becomes released. So Talmud Torah tells us, beware lest you thought in your heart that the 7th year is approaching. And if you will say Sheva Shanim, that the 7 years milva means for every individual loan, that the person is lending to each individual. How does it mean that it approached? The deadline for the release would be no closer to the inception of one loan than another loan. From here, learn Sheva Shanim, 7 years means Laminian Shmitas means the reckoning of the Shemitah year. Right. I kind of read it into that when I first said it, and it was wrong of me because it's not clear from these words. At the end of 7 years, the loans are released. That's what the next verse is going to speak about. There's a creditor, and the creditor can no longer get his loan, right? So from these words, you might think that it means from when you made that loan. But later on in the verse, we'll see in verse 9, it says when it approaches. Well, when it approaches is, one loan will be different than another loan. So what does it mean an approach? So it must be that there's the same approach to the same time, which means the sabbatical year and not 7 years from when you made the loan. That's what Rashi is saying. Okay, let's go further. And this is what the matter of the release is. Shamoit, kol bal masha, release, yodei, the bal masha means the creditor, right? So the creditor release, yodei, his hand, asher yashe bereyu, which he has lent to his friend. Can't let Diane in. Esreyehu v'esachiv and his brother. Kikara Shemitah LaHashem. Because the release has been called to Hashem, has arrived. Kara, called. Okay, Shemai Bal Masha the Yadai, Shemai this Yadai shall call Bal Masha. And Bal Masha means a master of the loan who has a hand on the loan, right? So what does that mean exactly? So Rashi interprets it to mean the release the hand of every creditor from reclaiming the loan. Right. So you've got your hand on somebody that owes you money, release your hand. Okay, that's what it means. Right. By the way, if you want to prove that Jews are communists, socialists, this is the proof right here. Right? Imagine I lend you money, and now comes the sabbatical year. That's it. I can't collect it anymore. That's not capitalism. Right? That's not capitalism. Sounds very communist. The difference also from communism, it's not going to the state. It's remaining with the person who's the debtor. Guy that owes me money, I can't collect from him. Now we learned all this these laws, and anyways, this is the biblical law over here. Okay. Someone who's a foreigner, you should exact from that person. In other words, a foreigner, you do not release. Right? What is yours with your brother, you shall release, but a foreigner who's not your brother, as a nachiti goish, the mitzvah essay from the foreigner, this is a positive commandment. In other words, that you should, if the foreigner means someone who is not part of the, not a Jew, or not, yeah. If they owe you money, then they got to pay.
Do you think this applies to an Wachai as well?
I don't think so. I mean that you do collect, yes. Yeah, I'm pretty certain. Because he's not achicha, he's not your brother. Right? Verse number 4. Ephes, however, there should be no evyain, a needy person, a poor person amongst you, because blessed, he will bless Hashem ba'aretz, in the land that Hashem, your God, is giving to you, nachla, as an inheritance, to possess. So why are you not taking this money back? Well, this guy hasn't paid you. Obviously, he's in trouble. By the way, how did you lend him money? Free loan. No interest, right? You're not allowed to take an interest from a Jew. Rashi, yeah, and there should be no destitute among you. Further, it says, the destitute people are not seized, right? So later on in verse number 11 is going to say, so we're saying on one hand, there should be no destitute. Then later on, there will always be destitute. So contradiction. What does it mean? When you're doing God's will, if you're the destitute, the destitute will not be amongst you, they'll be amongst others. But not amongst you. But when you're not doing God's will, you will have the destitute among you.
But others here refers to other.
Huh?
Others here.
Other nations. Other nations will have destitute, but you won't. Evyain, dalmi oni. What is the evyain? The term evyain is destitute, means he's more poor than a poor person. Lashon Evyain is Kishutav l'chol davar, means he's longing for everything because he has nothing. Rak im shamayatishma, only if you will listen, because Hashem Elokecha, to the voice of Hashem your God, lishmar, to guard, lasos, to heed and guard and to do all of kol mitzvahs, all of this mitzvah asher neich mitzavcha hayom that I'm commanding you today. Rashi rak im shamayatishma, also and others, when you're going to listen to me, then you won't have the destitute amongst you. Shamayatishma, shema kem. I say harbe. Why is it repeated? Shamaya tishma. Listen, you shall listen, right? Meaning that if one listens a little, he'll be granted the opportunity to listen much. Right? Shamaya, listen. Tishma, you will listen, meaning you'll listen to more of what Hashem says. Verse number 6. Ki Hashem because Hashem has your God has blessed you, as he spoke to you, rabim, and you may lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. Right? In other words, you'll be able. Wow, this is where the Jews became the money lenders, right? But Jews, right? They could not. They were not given in the nations of the world. They didn't give Jews land, right? So what did they do? They became merchants, and they became money lenders. Look at this. It says the Torah says, "Be money lenders." Right? When you're going to do the will of God, God's going to bless you, that you will be able to lend to the nations of the world, and you won't have to borrow from them. And you will rule over the nations, Rabbi, many nations, but they won't rule over you. Wow. Again, this is all in connection to doing the will of Hashem, right? Okay, verse number 6 in Rashi. Kasher diber as Hashem spoke to you. Heichan diber. What did he speak? Baruch atah ba'ir. Blessed are you in the city. That's going to be later on. We're going to see in chapter 28. That's where he spoke. Well, it sounds like he already spoke. Not in past tense, but okay. You will lend. This is an expression of a loan. When it applies to the lender. Mafil. So it's just explaining a grammar over here. It's a causative conjunction. For example, right, that you will lend. Would be applied to the borrower. Visa. Okay. And you will lend many nations. You might think that you will borrow from this one, lend it to that one. Talmud Leimer tells us, no, then you will not borrow. Okay. Why would you think that exactly? I'm not certain, but and you will rule many nations. You might think that other nations will rule over you. Others will not rule over you. You might rule over some nations, but some nations will rule over you. No. The verse concludes that no nation will rule over you. When is that? When you're doing the will of God. Verse number 7, there will be a needy person amongst you, from one of your brothers, in one of your cities, in your land, that Hashem, your God, is giving to you. Do not harden your heart, and do not close your hand from your needy brother. Wow. Will not be a destitute amongst you. Whoever is more wanting takes precedence. In other words, who do you give first to? those who are more in need. Because we have the word ani, which means poor. Which is interesting. We haven't used the word ani at all. That's the usual term for a poor person. As we said, as Rashi said, Evyon is someone who is even poorer than a poor person, right? And what's the verse coming to say? Who are you giving to first? The poorer one takes precedence. Right. By the way, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about giving charity? No, talking about a loan. A loan. That is a form of charity. As a matter of fact, the Rambam says it's the highest of the 8 levels. It's the highest form of being charitable, as you're giving a free loan to a fellow Jew, right? So they can maintain their dignity and and move forward. Huh? Yeah, exactly. One of your brothers, your brother from your father, takes precedence over the brother from your mother. Because it says one of your, it says from one of your brothers, means which sounds like you got 2 brothers, right? Means you got a brother from your father's side and a brother from your mother's side. So your father's side takes precedence. Why? Because when it comes to laws of an inheritance and Levirate marriage, it's from the father's side, not from the mother's side, in precedence. Present. Okay, next. Bisharecha in your cities, ani ircha, the poor in your city could mean take precedence, ani acheres, of the poor from another city. So you got to take care of your. Right here, the verse is giving us, the order and obligation. So first is your family, then is the poor in your city, in your community. Rashi continues, is do not harden your heart. You have a person, Shemitzar, who is pained, whether he should give or not give. He's torn between the desire to give and the desire to keep his money. Therefore it says, is do not harden. You have a person, stretch out his hand to give, and he closes it. Do not close your hand. Right now, a Jew is torn. You want to give, but you also want it for yourself. So verse is coming saying, open up your heart and open up your hand. From the destitute of your brother, if you will not give him, be a brother of the destitute. In other words, you'd be like him. Why does it have to say from your brother, the destitute? From the destitute, because we already said that it's your brother. Why is it repeating your brother? Because he's a brother of the needy, which means you'll be also needy like your brother if you don't give. Verse number 8. So you should open. You should open, you shall open. Is yadcha your hand to him, and you should lend him sufficiently. Day is sufficient. That which he's lacking. Of it for his needs, of that which he's lacking. Wow. This is where we learn a lot of the laws of being charitable. You shall open. Why does it say double? Because it means many times you have to open and give, not just one time. Oh, I lent you already. I'm not going to lend you anymore. I've helped you. I'm not going to help you again. No, you got to help again. Because you shall open. The word ki means here rather. Grant and you shall give him. If he does not wish to accept it as a gift, give it to him as a loan. Hmm. So it's his have tabitenu. It's a double language. So you means you got to give him. You got to grant him, right? So grant him whatever he wants. Does he want it as a gift, meaning outright you're giving it as being charitable, or as a loan, right? A free loan. So he maintains his dignity. Whatever that he wants, give him that way. Enough. Well, how much you should give him, how much he's lacking. You're not commanded. You don't have to make him rich, but what he's lacking, you got to give him. What does it mean that he's lacking to him? Even a horse to ride upon. It's fun and a slave to run ahead of him. In other words, if this is what he's if he was a rich person and he had real means, right? And now he's down and out. So you got to give him according to what his means are, what his way of lifestyle is. Right? So if he had a horse and a slave that came, so you got to give him that. Loi to him, Zuisha, that refers to his wife. That I'll make for him a helpmate against him. Interesting. Because the word loy is superfluous over here. Give him what he's lacking. What do you have to say to him? It means you know what it means? You got to find him a wife. You hear that? Got to find him a wife. Well, because that's also something he's lacking. In other words, what he's lacking to him. Him. What's the him? A helpmate. Because that's what the verse says. Right? Ezer Loy, I'll make for him. So what does he need? What's he lacking? Ezer Kenegdai, a wife. In other words, this poor person, you got to help out the person to the degree that you're not just helping them to stand on their own 2 feet, but to stand their own 2 feet and have a home, meaning to get married. Wow. Amazing. Just amazing what Torah tells us, right? You beware for yourself. Pen yedavar. Perhaps there's going to be a thing in your heart, with your heart. There's going to be something with your heart. It translates here unfaithful. You're going to be unfaithful in your heart. Right? And be unfaithful in your heart. Okay. And Lamor saying, what are you going to say to yourself? All right, this might be your conversation inside of you. It's coming close to the 7th year. Shnasa Shmita, the year of release. Vero Eincha. This is what before Rashi brought the proof, right? On our first verse number 1. Remember, Rashi said that you're releasing the loan on the 7th year. So you might think it's the 7th year from when you made the loan, right? Well, then this verse would make sense. It's coming close to 7th year, and you're going to think in your mind an unfaithful thought. What's that unfaithful thought? But first of all, how's it coming close to 7th year if you didn't give the loan yet? Because you're going to be thinking not to give the loan. So it means the 7th year has to be independent of giving the loan. 7th year means the sabbatical year, right? When all the land goes fallow. That's what it's referenced to, not your 7th year when you gave the loan, right? That's it. So now it's coming the 7th year of Shemitah, and you're going to have an evil eye. In your brother Ha'evyan, who is destitute. And what's the evil eye you're going to have? That the unfaithful thought. I'm not going to give him. You know why? I'm not going to give him. Because the sabbatical year is coming in 6 months. And in 6 months, he's not going to be able to pay me back. And guess what? The loan is annulled. Right? That was the first verse. The loan is annulled. So I'm not going to give him kara. So the verse comes to call upon you, Hashem. So God comes to call on you. It translates here, cry out. Okay. Not really the literal translation, but fine. What's he coming? That this will be a sin that you're not going to give. Rashi, come and cry out. Yochel mitzvah. You might think that it's a mitzvah obligation of the poor person to call out and cry out that the person not lending me. Tell me, that you should not call out. Later on, chapter 24, when we come back to this, you shouldn't call out. In other words, it's not a mitzvah for the poor person to call out to God and say, "Hey, he doesn't want to lend me money." It will be seen upon you as a sin. In any case, I feel like even if it is call out against you, the guy won't lend me money. If so, so why does it say that he's calling out against you? I hurry to take what is due through the one who does call out to me. More than the person who doesn't call out. Wow. Okay. It's truck. I give, you shall give to him. And you shall not have an evil heart in withholding to give him. Because of this reason, Hashem, your God, is going to bless you for all of your actions, all of your endeavors. Give, you shall give him even 100 times to the repetition of the word, right? Give. To give him, between him and you, and others privately. Don't make a big deal. I'm lending the guy already 20 times now. Make an announcement. No, privately. Because of this thing. Even if he would say just one time to give because of this thing, one time that you gave, for each time that you're going to give, you're going to get a reward for it, right? For each deed. For this should, because it will not cease to be the poor, amongst, remember there's a contradiction. Before we said that will not be poor. Now we said there will be poor, right? What was that dependent on? If we're going to follow Hashem's mitzvahs, exactly, right? So they will not cease to be the destitute in the midst of the earth, the land rather. Al Kain, therefore, I'm commanding you to saying, open, you shall open your hand, to your brother, to your poor, to the poor guy, and to the destitute in your land. Oh, interesting. Here it's ani, the poor. The lesser poor guy comes before the destitute guy. Interesting. Verse 11. Okay, therefore, Mipnei became because of this, lay more. An advice for your benefit. I'm giving you, God's giving us good advice. To your brother, to your poor one. To which brother? Lani, to the poor one. Laniecha, the poor one. Yud is spelled with one yud. Lashon ani echadhu. It means one poor person. But the word with two yuds is ishnei ani means two poor people. Okay. 12. Now we go to a different. Right. If your brother is going to sell to you a Hebrew man, right? He's going to sell to you your brother, Ivri, who's a manservant, Hebrew manservant, or Ivri, or a Hebrew woman servant. And they work for you for 6 years. And the 7th year, the 7th year, you shall send them off free. Right? Remember, Rashi, 12. So when your brother, you're right, he's going to be sold to you by others. Based on what it means, the court sold him because he was a thief. As the verse speaks, that the thief couldn't pay back what he stole. So he's sold into slavery, and that money will be given to the person he stole from. We already said this. We already learned this in Mishpatim. And the verse there is speaking about when the court sold you. So then why are we coming here to repeat what we learned already? But in this, the second passage is written because there are two things that are presented here that were not before. That were introduced here. Echad, one is it's also a Hebrew woman slave, which implies Afi Teitzim B'Sheish. It means she also goes out in the 6 years. But Torah did not speak about her that the court sold her. Because a woman is not sold because of her theft. Right? If a woman is sold and she couldn't pay back, she's not sold into slavery because of that. Because the verse says his theft, which implies which means not her theft. Ella. So our verse over here is coming to say it's speaking about over here. Then what's speaking over here? If it's because it speaks about a woman over here, so it means a minor that the father sold her into slavery. The limit kind of comes to teach us that if she goes out in 6 years, before she has signs of puberty, she should go out. But also, Chidish Khan, they're choosing over here, Hanek Tanik, that you have to grant the slave, you have to give them gifts upon their leaving. Okay. When you will send them free from you, don't send them out empty-handed. Hanek Tanik loy, you shall surely provide for him. From this is severance pay that you're giving, if you will, so to speak, right? A gift upon their leaving you. A beautiful sikh from the Rebbe on this week. I just learned. From your sheep, from your flock, from your threshing floor, and from your vat, that Hashem your God has blessed you, give him. Rashi Hanek in 14. That you will extend and gain Veloshin Adi. This is an adornment. Begeva Obemaris Ayin. Worn in a high place in a visible manner. Davashu Nika, something that's discernible. Sheheti Vasaloi, that you benefited him. Yesh Mefarshim, and those who explain Lashon Hatana al Tavarai, that means loading onto the slave's neck. As it's something that's going to be discernible that you that this slave became freed, and you benefited him. When you got from your flock, from your threshing floor, from the wine pit, I might think that I only give from these three categories. The verse says, no, that which God has blessed you. So then why does it say these three things? Mikol Mashe Berecha Berecha. Everything that God blessed you with, your Creator blessed you. Lama Nemra. Listen, why these three things specify? Ma Elam Yuchadim. Just as these three things are distinct, how they distinct. Shem Bechal Beracha. That they're in the category of a blessing, meaning that they increase naturally. Meaning, a flock gives birth to the right, and produce gives, yields produce. In other words, it's not like giving them money. The money itself doesn't yield anything. It can be used for something, but it doesn't yield anything. Cattle does, a flock does, and so does produce. That's what's considered a natural increasing blessing. All that which is in the category of the blessing, which mules are therefore excluded. Right? A mule is a hybrid of a horse and a donkey and cannot produce offspring. So they're not in the category. Lama Rabbeinu, why? And our sages learn out from Kedushin, from Shava, the man Naisin, and what you should give the freed slave, Mikol Min Vamin, you should give from a variety of all different things. 15. V'zacharta, and you shall remember, ki eved, you said that you were a slave, Eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt, and he redeemed you, Hashem, your God, from Egypt. Al Kain, therefore, therefore I'm commanding you, on this particular thing today, right? Meaning, give to the slave that now is being freed, give them their severance. Zacharta, you say, remember that you were a slave. And I gave and granted once and gave you once again. The Bizas Mitzrayim from the spoils of the Egyptians, the Bizas Yam, and the spoils of the sea. Afata, likewise, that you should give once and once again. And if it will be that he will say to you, I don't want to leave, right? After 6 years, the slave says, I don't want to leave. Because I love you. And your household, because it's good for him to be with you, right? He doesn't want the kaftas, might say, and therefore you should take the all and the in place and on his ear by the door. He'll be a servant forever. Likewise, a maid servant to do as such. 17. Eved Olam, eternal slave. Yochel, I might think. Kimashmai means as it sounds. Talmud Labor, the Torah tells the other way, that he shall return a man to his ancestral heritage. Each man shall return to his family. Here we learn that it means an eternity of the Yovel, the 50th year. In other words, the 50th year they go back. So 50 years is a eternity in that sense. Likewise, the maidservant you shall do, that you should give to her, grant her, and when she is freed, I might think of the Ritzia, awful boring year too. Ishva you saw that the Torah is making her equal to the male slave. But the Torah says otherwise. It said that if he says, not if they say, meaning he and her, right? So Evan here, so therefore the servant undergoes the boring, gets an earring. But the maidservant doesn't get it. Last verse. And if it'll be difficult for you to send them away, I say, me about to send them free from you. Because he served you for As much as a hired servant, because he worked for you for 6 years. Hashem regard is going to bless you in all that you do. Rashi in 18. For the double earnings of a hired worker. Mikan Amru, from here we learn, based on this, Eved Ivri, that a Hebrew slave works, whether by day or by night. So this is double work that he's hired for. What does he work at night? So master gives him a Canaanite slave woman. The offspring belong to the master. Something we learned also in Parshas Mishpatim. Okay, gotta run now so we can go to Tanya.